yourself depends on what you think of yourself. And what you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself. And what you know of yourself depends on what you've been told of yourself. Yes, yes. Antonio was back on the other side of the pond. Yes, I'm telling you, it was a great experience, an eye-opening experience, and a recharging experience. I had to do that in order to get refocused on my direction and to bring you some good information and to validate some things that we've been talking about on this show forever through all the guests that we've been bringing on the show. And we've been talking about this connection between Africa and African Americans over here. And it's definitely necessary. And talk to some great people over there and lovely people over there. And actually a lot of people that are going back and setting up and building houses up in Ghana. You know, I believe Ghana has more expats from America than any other country. So they're moving over there. But what I would caution you and say that when you go over there, you don't go over there with the same mentality that you have in America, and don't try to bring America to Ghana. Okay, it's a whole different place, and you got to come with a different mindset and trying to engulf yourself into the culture and learning the culture as well. So that's what it's all about. And don't bring that crap, that Western mentality like they did in Liberia initially when the slaves was freed and went back to that particular country. But all in all, it was a wonderful time, wonderful experience, and you're gonna be hearing more about it. In the remote studio, we got our good brother Vince. What's going on, Vince?
Well, you may recognize this or may not, but this is a different remote studio. I didn't get all the way across the Atlantic Ocean as our brother Antonio did, but right now I'm down in Florida and I'm just enjoying a few days away from Cleveland. I heard it snowed yesterday or the day before, so I really felt good about being in the warm and sunny and having access to beaches and everything. Just want to give a quick announcement. We are going to have a spoken word show at Larchmere Arts on Saturday that will feature the photographs of Deanna Thompson, who has photographed several poets, several spoken word artists in the Cleveland area. We're going to have their pictures on display, and they are also going to do performances. So we're looking at each poet, and I think we have about 8 or so lined up. They're going to do some performances. We're going to have some live music. Looking forward to that. And also last Friday, we had a concert with Gloria Cummings Jones. She is a vocalist who once upon a time did shows with Dewey Jeffries, and she brought along with her Ed Ridley, Elijah Gilmore, and Brad McGee. And I'm telling you, it was a phenomenal concert. Evelyn Wright and Shirley Cook, 2 other singers, stepped up to the mic and they did a few songs as well. And we're going to restage that concert on the 28th of this month. So stay tuned for more information about that. You can see it on our Facebook page. We're looking forward to that as well. So we're ramping things up at Larchmere Arts, and that was part of my plan for Larchmere Arts this year, to get it back in full swing and let it do what it does. So that's it for the announcements. I'm really excited about our guest. He is a world traveler as well, and he spent some time down in South America. I think the country was Peru. And so we're going to hear all about that, as well as getting more about your trip to Ghana and what's transpiring over there. We did get an update from Nana Kwamina, and he showed us video evidence of the progress in that community or that conference center that's being built in Commenda. So much going on. And Brother Hamptoni, I'm telling you, brother, you could not have been in a better place for the past couple of weeks. So, I'm looking forward to making that trip. I might make it later this year. I'm not saying that it's going to happen for real, but we will see. So in the meantime, we are going to welcome aboard Dr. T. Owens Moore, and I know you have seen him on this program several times, but for those of you who haven't, let me just give you a few details. He's trained as a physiological psychologist. He's a graduate of Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, and he has an MS and a Ph.D. from Howard University. For more than 20 years, he served as a college professor, a biomedical researcher, and an African-centered scholar and activist. He is a distinguished educator who appreciates interdisciplinary studies. He served as an assistant professor at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, and as an associate professor and chairperson of the Department of Psychology at Clark Atlanta University, and professor and chair of the Department of Psychology at Fayetteville State University in North Carolina. His specialty courses are both in the field of neuroscience and African-centered psychology. So with that, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce to you Dr. T. Owens Moore.
So my brothers, how you doing?
We doing good, brother. We doing good. Hey, are you down there playing tennis, man? Is it weather good enough to play some tennis down there?
That's why I'll spend a few hours, few moments with you, and I'm back on the court.
Back on the court. Yeah. I mean, that's a beautiful thing to be able to, keep that going, because I'm seeing it now. But these bones starting to stiffen up. I got to get back to moving, man. Got to get back to moving.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So my good brother, you've been, keeping me abreast of some of your moves you've been making around the world. And, one of your recent trips, I think around January, December or something like that you went over to Peru. And you talked about some exciting things that I think you did a video some on it too, didn't you? Yeah, I seen some of it. Yeah, and I wanted to bring it to our listeners, and it's just, this is the age of information, and a lot of things are floating around right now. And I think, in general sense, most Black folks are starting to understand just what type of presence that African people have made all over the world. We talk, it's a big buzz thing now of these foundation Africans here or foundation Americans, whatever they call themselves, in the States here. And of course, we traveled here, we've been here, and we taught the Native Americans, and we can go in and talk about the Mayas and the Incas and the Aztecs and things of that nature, our influence on those particular civilizations as well. And what people don't know is that how much of influence we had up in Europe as well, with the Grimaldis and stuff that went up in Europe, and the Moors that taught them civilizations as well. And then I did a lecture with our good brother Wayne Chandler that talked about our presence in India and in China. Mm-hmm. So this information is starting to come out, and people starting to educate themselves on that. So, and you went to Peru, because let me back up for a second. When me and Vince went to Panama, when we went to Colón down there in Panama, we seen some Black presence in Panama, as well. We was over there, civilizing the place and bringing our talents there. So you went over to Peru. Can you give us a little update on what you see and what caused you, to want to visit Peru?
Okay, well, for those introductory remarks, I appreciate you putting those 20 years, but actually I've been in the game 30 years now. Wow. 30 years teaching. And when you put the age on it, I now have a student in my class who's the daughter of a brother I taught back at Morehouse back in the day. Wow.
Okay.
So
like that.
Yeah, so that's some age. And so when you look at just the age, you also look at the longevity of our commitment to what we do. Mm-hmm. When you think about one day here in North America, we might be extinct. Like the black lion might be like the new bald eagle. Like, have you seen them anymore? Mm-hmm. It is March right now, March Madness, but there might be a day where people might say, "Did you see them people? Did you hear the history? They used to like dunk basketballs, like curl up and talk with one hand. Did you see them people? Man, that used to hit home runs. I mean, this guy named Hank Aaron, I don't know where they don't even exist anymore. Man, did you see those people who used to dance and glide across the stage and singing? They might not exist anymore." So when we look at history, that's how we're looking at it thousands of years ago, where we were in certain places.
I see.
We were in environments where people looked at them and amazed at the beauty and that blackness, because some of those people that were in those areas had never seen a dark person. So as we travel the world and as we've made impacts, we've had some tremendous changes in those environments. So when you said I went to Peru, I got that shirt on. It says Peru, but guess what? It could be Heru, huh?
Yeah, I was looking at that.
So you think about you ever heard of Jerusalem?
Mm-hmm.
Jerusalem and over there in the so-called North Africa. We ain't gonna call it Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Northern Africa. How about Jerusalem? We got to start looking at the fact that all those places that we have and thought about over there in North Africa, they were also on the other side of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the names. So you asked me why did I travel? Because I'm actually following in the path of people like Runoko Rashidi. You know Runoko Rashidi?
Mm-hmm.
My global journeys in search of African presence because of a brother like this. We know about what's going on there in India. He talked about Wayne Chandler, his book Ancient Future, travel the world and seeing our presence in other places. You also interviewed this brother, Manu Ampum.
Mm-hmm.
He's over there in Nubia, over there in Africa, uncovering, our presence. You got Tony Browder, had a excavation site, black excavation site, looking at Karakamoon.
Mm-hmm.
25th dynasty, which is unquestionably black when you start thinking about pharaohs there in Africa. So we've been all over the world, but how do you now look at us as Africans outside of Africa, going to other places? And when you think of pyramids that are in other areas of the world, in Peru, they have more pyramids in Peru than they do in Kemet.
Wow.
Not Africa. Not like saying they got more than Nubia, because Nubia has the most.
Mm-hmm.
But you got more pyramids in other side of the world in Peru versus Kemet. We know about the Giza Plateau with those gigantic ones, Cheops and Khufu and big, but you got the same thing on the other side of the world. And it doesn't really rain a lot over there in Peru. So some of those monuments are really made out of like sand, clay and sand. So not the same boulders that we have on the other side of the planet that we did. So they're still standing, but they're delicate, but they've been standing those many years. So as I've traveled, I wanted to go to a place called Machu Picchu. So if you are saying that you watched the video that I did on my travels to Peru, there's a book by Horace Butler called When Rocks Cry Out. And he's saying that over there in Peru, that's where we were, and that's where the original Egypt was. You have to start asking those questions. You start to look at the names of places. You got a place over there called Cusco. Cusco. You look at Cusco, Cusco over there in Africa, in Peru. But what about there in Africa? Ever heard of a place called Kush? It's actually in the Bible, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Kush is in the Bible. You got a place there, Kush, Nubia, all the way the black people came from that would help to start the civilization up there in Kemet. So as we chop it up right here, and as we've all traveled the world, we start to then go to the places to see our presence. And we're not disregarded in other places. People like our black skin. They love our beauty because they don't see that. It's the way that the media portrays us and has us looking like buffoons. And so we then don't get the respect that we need. But as you're traveling, it's like, well, if you can travel, then guess what? You must be somebody that is knowledgeable of the world. And as we then go and then share our history, because again, I've been in places like Vietnam and sharing information about the African presence in early Asia. And of course, they didn't know. So I left my books over there for them to have, but they didn't know. Until we share that, they're not going to know. So unless we go travel, we're not going to know. So if you have a chance to go to Peru, you fly through Lima. It's the big city, cosmopolitan, just like any other big city. They have hotels where your car can go in like an elevator, take you down. I mean, it's modern. It's kind of congested like any other city here in the United States. It's cosmopolitan. But then you make your trek to go to inland and a place called Cusco. And I'm just saying that's like they call it the navel of the world over there. You think of Kush in Africa, it's like the beginning of the civilizations that in the birth of the Nile Valley civilizations. So you have to ask, how was the connection? How did that work? I'm reading this book right now because I'm actually going to Colombia this month. So I'm going to Cartagena. Cartagena is like on the coast side. That's where the European or Spanish set up these things called the Asiento contracts. don't know if you ever heard of that, but it's like, okay, everybody's fighting over these slaves, all this kind of slave. Fighting over the black gold, let's call it what it is. Because the native peoples of the land couldn't do the work. White folks couldn't do the work. They had to get that black gold to be strong enough to do all this so-called labor. So they set up contracts there in that area of the world so everybody can come and get the same slaves and we ain't got to fight over them. Here they are, they're going to be. So right there in Cartagena is the Asiento contracts. We're going to go also to places like Palenque to look at where the Africans got away, went to the hillsides, the mountains, and started their own, like we see in Brazil with quilombos. So this book right here called Born in Blackness. Born in Blackness. It says Born in Blackness, Africa, Africans, and the Making of the Modern World, 1471 to the Second World War. This is by Howard French. I find it fascinating because he's really talking about our dispersion, where we were all over the world, how we were more than just slaves, but how the European was looking at how they're going to control the world. And they're going to control the world by getting that black gold. First, it was about gold, like the resource, the mineral gold. But then when they saw that they got these people that they can keep on corralling and maybe making money off of them, the material became now more people. And so the way that he describes is Born in Blackness. And as we then travel over the world, we see we've been places such as Peru. So when I say Peru, again, you got to look at the word Peru, Haru. You got to ask, well, how did the Africans get there? I don't know if I'm even, because it's not really shining right on here, but if you even look at a globe, y'all see my globe?
Yeah.
Yes.
So here we are over here in America, right? Right. North America. It's Africa. They want a 23-degree tilt, so I can't really show it to you here except for saying that's North America.
Okay, I got you.
South America's on the bottom.
Right.
Africa's way over here, right? Africa's way over here, right? So how do you get North America, Africa, South America? By the waterways. Ain't no planes back then. You just came from Ghana. I went to Ghana back in the day. They had Ghana Airways. It's like soul plane. I don't know if it's in existence anymore, but it's bad.
It's not.
What plane did you fly to go to Ghana?
Delta.
So they don't have a airline right now, Ghana Airways?
No, they don't.
Yeah, it went down back in the day when I was going there. So we need to have our own airline somehow. You know what happened in the Sahel countries, Mali, Nigeria, and Burkina Faso, where they told the French to get out. Air France is not going there like they used to anymore. So there needs to be now some replacement, some other entity to come in there to do that. But I'm just saying that it's not like we waited for planes to travel. We were traveling the oceans. Irving Van Sertima, you know that. He talked about the currents that are there in the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean. And I'm starting to look at all this about these naming of things, because you saw what this Agent Orange and his 2025 crew want to do is rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. That's a hegemonic way of thinking about things. Like they control the world because they've been doing it for a while. We got all the information as to why they do those things. But why isn't there no African Ocean? Why is it the Indian Ocean? Why is the Pacific or the Atlantic? Why isn't it an African Ocean? If it's the largest continent with everything and all the resources all the people came from, why don't we have? Because it's about controlling knowledge, manipulating history. There's no Middle East. Oh, that's North Africa. So those names of Mesopotamia, Sumer, those were all black people. We can't conceptualize in our mind because the images they show look like some real bearded white Vikings that are in that area, but those were black people. And as you went to Ghana, you say, I went to Panama, all those places are hot. Hot. You can't be melanin recessive living in an environment where the sun is always shining. So early on those people were black people. And now when you start going back into history, you start to look at the things that have been done back then. The Shang dynasties, maybe 1700s. You got Buddha. That was maybe also around the same time that things were going on in Kemet. You got all these places, even in India, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. All those places were having progressive civilizations at the same time we talk about things that were going on in Kemet. So given that, on the other side of the world in Peru, the same things were going on. So in that video that you saw that I did, and potentially I guess maybe get a link for the your crew for this program, they can look at that video. But I'm just saying you got to start looking at the parallels of the names. Even in Nubia, there's a place called Qustul, Qustul. Somebody can go research that. Qustul sounds like Cusco in Peru. We already talked about Kush in Africa, so we kind of carried our names of our traditions as we went and traveled. The population over there in Peru, the Inca are the native peoples of the land that they say pretty much managed that and controlled that, but that was like a small span of history. It wasn't even as long as America has been in existence. So I'm not saying that they weren't strong and powerful. You had the Aztecs, not saying they weren't strong and powerful, but they had influence from the Africans that were already there. The Africans that came down and then had an influence on their cultural experience, like building those pyramids, knowing where they came from. So not saying that that's the first set of pyramids, but if you start going back in history, we may not know where we really came from. Like I talked about that book, Blacks, The Race from Beyond the Stars by Paul Duncan. We have to start to ask the question, where did we really come from? You know, David Imhotep. You ever got his book? The first Americans were Africans. So my next step beyond looking at South America is because I'm going to Colombia this month. Spent time in Brazil. I've been in, like I said, just went to Peru. I have a colleague in Brazil that's now the head of the archives there. He shared this thick book with me. This book, it says 220 years of the revolts of the Buzios. This is the blacks in Salvador Bahia. When they revolted, that's why they got the independence I guess you say emancipation there in Brazil. United States, 1863. Brazil, 1888. But it was the blacks in Salvador Bahia that fought. He's now, as the archivist, trying to look at what were the links of those Africans to the people in Angola. Where did they come from? Names. What are those? Pereira, Castro, whatever the names may be linked. How can they now have a connection to a family line that then links them to a place that they came from? That's over in Brazil. We don't do that in America. So you got a black brother, my colleague, Jorge X, who's now running this archives, and he's got the documents, he's got the data, he's met with presidents. We don't do that here in the United States. They have an African Independence Day in Brazil, November 20th, Zumbi Day. We don't even have an African Independence Day in America. So we got a lot of fight. Like I say, someday, at some point, we might be extinct. So that's why it's up to us to do what we can to keep on providing the knowledge and share the information to people to let them know that, look, you have a presence that's all over the world. And so when I went to Cusco and I didn't saw it was, if you ever heard of Machu Picchu, man, we talking about that's 11,000 feet up. In Cusco, it's 13,000 feet up. You have to have a certain body type to breathe in that. It's not even a joke. I had altitude sickness, trying to survive in an environment. And then just thinking about that, how you didn't get those gigantic
I'm saying people working up there in that environment, man.
Had to be some guys that did that. That's what I'm saying. We talked about America being extinct at one point. Who are those guys who used to slam the basketballs like that? They don't exist anymore. Used to be something called March Madness. You should have seen them. They just generated all this money for the economy. Where they go? Extinct. So the same thing I'm saying happened on the other side of the world where we did some things because there's no way that those people did that in that one span of time. It was people build on top of stuff. You know, because that's why then you look at the longevity of it. Some of that stuff was there maybe 10,000 years ago. And we already talked about what's going on in Africa in terms of Dr. Charles Finch. I don't know if you have his book. A 10,000 year history, not so much rewriting things, but looking at what the documents say about we've been here so long. And we've been extinct in some places for so long that we got historical amnesia. We can't put in perspective that we were the people that were traveling over there in South America not just coming down, the whole story that we came down from the Bering Strait, came down from America, went down there into Central America, and then they populated South. So that's kind of a storyline.
Right. But
they came not just from the African side and then going into Brazil and then taking the waterways, going over there to Peru and areas, but they also came from the Indian Ocean side, India, and traveling through those islands. Because how are you going to have in the middle of the Pacific, the Melanesian Islands? They only call it Melanesian because there's black people there. There's Micronesian, there's Polynesian. Those people that were traveling knew the currents. And they've been stopped in certain places, even Hawaii. You think about that, because that was a black nation. Then you keep going and you get hit Peru. So it's just not like you have to be on the land just to get there. You're traveling the seaways. Mm-hmm. And there's no way we're going to wait for some guy named Christopher Colon to come and tell us how we sail the seas. He got that from black people. Actually, the people like the Moors. So when I was in Peru, oh my goodness, walking through the Lima and the big city and seeing the cathedrals, they wiped the Moor presence out. They got Moorish, like women with their dresses on there, but they got the faces all covered up. They don't even see. I mean, it looks beautiful, a little colored, but the faces all covered up. They have the cathedrals, and in the inside of the cathedrals, they have the Moorish architecture, the Moorish courtyards. So when them conquistadors came into Peru and they saw the monuments, they're looking for the gold. That's what they're looking for. I ain't worried about the people. They massacred the people. But them conquistadors were looking, and they're asking questions, and the people who were already there said, man, there used to be black people that came here first. They were here first. So they looked at these pale-skinned people as weird, like their skin looked kind of like, oatmeal. I don't know what it was, but they kind of looked bizarre. They saw those Africans years ago and documented like, wow, look at that, them black gods bringing civilization. Because when you look at the Aztec had black influence from Africa. Aztec that all leads into the Mayans, which is what Olmec. And so we were over there a long time ago. But I'm just using an example of, you can't imagine that then, because we see us now not doing too much. But again, in North America, there might be a day where we might be extinct. That's a real question.
Mm-hmm. What I wanted to just to add to what you said, and that's what given, I guess, some fuel to some of the people that's talked about this foundation American situations, to where we had Memphis over here. Yeah. There's a few other names that we had right here in the Americas, so that show how far our reach went, all over the globe, and doing what we was doing, and also too, it's funny that you mentioned it when you said how come it wasn't no ocean or sea named African. Well, I was just reading something that happened. They said around in the 19th century, 18 something, where they changed the name. The Atlantic Ocean used to be the Ethiopian Ocean.
Oh wow!
So yes, I was just reading that this morning, man. It's funny you say that. I was just reading that this morning. I was like, so, question, Doc. You're a psychologist too, as well. How much effort, how much energy, how many lies? What this man afraid of? Just extinction? Telling the truth? Because again, Trump want to attack critical race theory in schools now, talking about defunding some of these schools and things of that nature. If pretty much they're saying if you're teaching us type of history that we don't approve of, okay. This and we have to understand it. The man just scared to death. I kind of maybe answered my own question. Is that he's just scared to death. And I guess anybody who's trying to run the whole planet and know that they're only 10% of the planet, you got to have the biggest gun. And to control people mentally, you got to get into their head and make them think that they ain't a true lion, or you didn't do anything, or wipe out any kind of remnants of culture and history that you have to be successful in what you're trying to do. Yeah,
you're a officer of the law, so you know about weaponry and how important it is. So when the conquistadors came into Africa, not just Africa, but then when they came into South America, when they came to islands, when they came everywhere, they had the weapon. Gun. So that weapon became useful to deter any opposition. And I know there was like when we were there in Africa and all the factions, and that's why they came and got us, because we had tribes fighting one another. And so the European exploited that kind of reality. And there are some Africans like, look, man, you ain't doing this no more. Make some deals, sell us your cannons. Sell us your cannons. You ain't getting no more slaves. Benin, Benin, where current day Nigeria is. They would kind of make some deals with the Europeans. Will give us your cannons. No, because you went to Ghana, you seen the Cape Coast, you seen Elmina on the property. Got the cannons still there with the balls you can't even pick up, and things are so heavy. But the European knew if we give them Africans weapons, oh no, we in trouble. So all over the world, and conquistadors have gone there until this day. If you got black people organized saying they got the guns, let's get our stuff, let's protect ourselves, the rules change. The policies change. You saw having the Black Panthers.
I just want to say like the Panthers, huh? Yeah.
So if we go back in history, you see why we were wiped out, because even in the United States with the Gatling gun, you can't fight anything against a Gatling gun. Something just shooting, just indiscriminately and just killing people. So if people have a mindset to do that, but when you shoot back, I don't know if you know, I can yell at Emoji. There's a book called We Will Shoot Back. I don't know if you know about Brother Robert Williams from North Carolina, Negroes with Guns. I mean, you heard of Deacons for Defense in the South, in the South. So all that is there, but they don't want you learning that. So when you ask about the nature of where these individuals are today, because it ain't just Agent Orange, it's the whole scheme. And that's why he then becomes the major progenitor of their thinking. So that's why we miss Dr. Welsing right now. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing broke all this down for us with the Crest theory of color confrontation. If there was a grand prize to be awarded for humanity, she should get that posthumously. That's because she's not here anymore. But she says the two driving factors behind why Europeans organize do what they do is because they're numerically inadequate. That means there's not enough of them, so they got to organize on every level: politics, religion, law, sex, blah, blah, blah. And then they're genetically inferior. We didn't say inferiority complexes, not talking about superiority, because now white people throw that on you. Oh, y'all talking like y'all superior. No one said that. We said you have an inferiority complex because if the black woman, as the white man, make a baby, so what? Black baby. White woman and the black man have a baby. It's a black baby, genetically annihilated. Oh my goodness, we fear that. And that's why them conquistadors and people going over the world, destroying these other cultures, they coming in, raping and pillaging, but then it's like, uh-oh, man, them babies ain't coming out white. We're at some point going to be eradicated. So we fast forward in life, decades, centuries, decades to years, we now have the manifestation of we got to do whatever we got to do to survive. When you're on the deathbed, from what I hear, you're on the deathbed, you do some crazy stuff. This man wants to take Greenland. This man wants to take Panama Canal. This man wants to take, when you're on the deathbed, you do stupid.
Come on. That's exactly what I said. Before I bring my good brother Vince in, just two things I just want to add to that is that for our listeners to, I always talk about NATO, you know what I'm saying? So I was just curious just to see, what are the countries that are in NATO? I challenge everybody to go look up NATO and check out all the countries in NATO. It would tell you what they're trying to do. It's the survival of them, all white nations. Okay, so what are they saying? We posseing up together to protect each other and ourselves. That's what they're telling you, and it's right in your face. And they talk about NATO all the time, and this is what it's all about. Second thing is that some historians say the problem that we had was believing that they were like themselves, these foreigners. I'm going to go ahead and say it was human beings. Okay, that's the mistake that they made. Because think about it, on all those seashores from which they came, historically, tell me when there was some great big fight of some type of stoppage from them coming to the shore. Then everybody and every shore that they went to, when the Britons went around selling and exploring all these territories, everybody let them in.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody let them in. There wasn't no great battles on the shore. You could have starved them out. You could have kept them out to sea for forever. If you know what I'm saying, just like some of these little small villages, it's a couple places around the world.
Up in New Guinea. Yep, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they don't let them come to the show, you know. But I'm saying historically, where's these great battles on the seashores? We let them all in and treated them. And I believe it was in Columbus diary or something I was just recently reading, and they were saying, man, these people will give you everything. You ask them for something, they'll give it to you and open up themselves to you. We can easily take these people. And that's the mentality that they had going around the planet. But I know our good brother Vince wants to chime in on that, on our conversation. What's going on, Vince? What you got for Doc?
Well, there was so much to unpack in what he gave us about the migrations and the currents bringing Africans to other parts of the world. But then you also mentioned the genetic situation in terms of recessive genes and dominant genes and what happened. So before I ask the question, I just want to mention that you're listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. We are having a conversation with Dr. T. Owens Moore, who is an expert on all things related to the brain and neuroscience, but he is also well-traveled and very steeped in history. Would like to invite you to subscribe to our various channels. You can subscribe to this channel, which is my channel. Brother Hamtonio also has a channel on YouTube called The Journey with Hamtonio. Like, comment, and subscribe if you will, and help us on our journey to 1,000 subscribers. You can also access this program on our Facebook page, which is 360 Info Network, and our respective individual pages. So I want to ask this question of you, Dr. Moore, related to this whole idea of the mixing that's taking place. We're seeing a lot of commercials and advertising that are showing this biracial situation, a white man with a black woman and all these other kinds of things. Can you talk to us about why this might be happening, perhaps what the psychology of that is and what the motive is for putting that out there?
Well, I don't think it's now. It has been going on. You're seeing the manifestation of what it has produced now. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to say that you're saying the more kind of commercials and advertisements on paper you're seeing with the mix. No, this is now the manifestation of what has been for generations, showing that, oh, Michael Jackson stuff, can't we all just get along? Can we all just be together? Knowing full well they intend on exploiting you. So it's weakening the African connection. When I see those brothers playing the big games, because you know the athletes become pawns in the game, in the chess game, because you give them all that money, so they don't have what they ain't going to fight back. They ain't going to say nothing because they want that money. Mm-hmm. You see that African, that black person, and then you see the white woman. Man, I look at that as the hemorrhaging of wealth in the black community, because you're making millions of dollars, and now you're marrying it outside of your ethnicity, outside of your genetic pool, and then you got these mixed babies, and you got the disintegration of the African opportunities to gain wealth. So I don't think it's something that's going on now. No, it's been staged, set up for so long. And now you got to look at the same scenario with the effeminization of men. You keep showing all these gay or homosexual type orientations on TV and the media. And hey, that's your lifestyle, that's your lifestyle. But you keep on showing that, it doesn't work, because the most dominant threat to a ruling patriarchal society is another male. You feminize the male, you have no threat. Mm-hmm. That's why they were scared of Khalid Abdul Muhammad. That's why they didn't like Louis Farrakhan talking. That's why Malcolm X was a threat. Anybody who's talking truth to the system, you saw it in that last Daffy Duck show on the so-called, I say Daffy Duck because, anytime you got to keep on clapping your hands at something that's crazy being stated at the last, was it the
State of Union thing?
Yeah, State of Union. You call it State of Disunion. Mm-hmm. You had a brother that stood up, Al Green. You had a brother that stood up and say, "Oh, you ain't no king here." The brother stood up fighting for people who need to have their Medicaid, Medicare. So our brother stood up anytime, and they censure him. What? Mm-hmm. This is history. They censored the black man because he spoke up truth to a dictator. And white people and everybody just sitting around like bending their heads down. Y'all better pick up a weapon. You better do something. The weapon could be this. The weapon could be that. You better pick up a weapon. So we're in a state of time now where they set the stage for people to be passive. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying, as you asked that question, Vince, I'm saying that it has been going on for so long now. Can't we all just get along? You got kids in class, the students growing up right now. I feel sorry for them in these environments where they're now being targeted because now they have a free reign to attack Black people. You know what I mean? They got rid of affirmative action, got rid of things they call diversity, equity, inclusion. As they are getting rid of those things, those kids become anxious prone, anxiety ridden. How do they operate psychologically in that environment? And I'm saying that this is our time to shine. Kwanzaa, we just passed that in December. We just had this we're going to change the African Heritage Month. So we have times now to shine every day now. If the only person's going to help you is the one in the mirror. That's us. So those children in those environments where they've been having all the kind of like we are the world, let's just mix together and be, that's not going to happen. And you've seen it in 2025 in a matter of 2 months with this administration. They coming after you and everything exists that deals with you. So if you don't have this and don't maintain that and not teaching that from your home, you're not going to make it. That's why I said about us being extinct. It's going to happen one day if people aren't taking advantage of building. And that's why I'll need you to, with your expertise, I'm going to have a conference called Blueprint for Pigment Power, because we have to start thinking about what is the blueprint? How do we now work this out? They got a 300-year plan. They had 2025 way back in the day. They made it manifest. What are we doing? Sitting around watching basketball games? Entertaining, watching stupid videos, dealing with sex. I just went and saw Martin Lawrence the other day. Martin Lawrence is struggling right now with his health, but he came out to do a performance to say, hey, I'm still out here, but struggling. But Martin Lawrence and all three of the other comedians all talked about sex. All talked about sex is like the lines, like the storylines, like we ain't got nothing else more to talk about. So I'm just saying, we as a
especially people, in this time, what's going on right now. Yeah.
So and then you have comedians like Joshua Johnson. I don't know if you saw the recent video that he did when he was breaking down the Kendrick Lamar halftime performance. But this brother, he was just talking the truth, and it wasn't about sex. It was about reality. And he had a largely white audience, but they were eating it up.
His young brother with braids, with locks. His young brother with locks.
Huh?
Is his young brother with locks, braids?
I think he does. Yes.
He's kind of slow in his draw, and I think I know you're talking about.
Clean face young brother. Yeah. The brother. Yeah. I know you're talking about. Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was on point. You also mentioned anxiety, and since this election has taken place, I think the anxiety level has gone up. Because if you turn on the news, every time you turn on the news, they're talking about Agent Orange. I like that. I'm going to start using that, brother.
Absolutely.
But every time you turn on the news, they're talking about him, and they're talking about things that are being taken away from us. And, we have these conversations about the impact of stress on our lives and how it affects our bodies, our physiology. But then this constant perpetual anxiety, some of it has us thinking about leaving this country to go to a more peaceful place like Ghana or Colombia or other places in the world. Yeah. I'm just wondering, what is the impact of what seems to be a heightened level of anxiety?
So that's why I'm saying the focus has to be on us and our power, but we have to be able to analyze what's going on. For example, there's a mountain named after Paul Robeson. Do you know where in the world there's a mountain named after Paul Robeson? Russia.
Oh, wow.
There's a university named after Patrice Lumumba. Can you tell me where in the world that is? Russia. So you have had Africans that have traveled to the continent or that area of the world, and they've been received. Paul Robeson had his passport taken for years because of his connections to, they keep using the word communism. But let me put this in context why I'm saying critically analyze things. If you're seeing a Jewish person like Netanyahu, you're seeing a Russian person like Putin, you're seeing a white man like, I gotta call him white because white people in America, they don't call themselves Italian Americans anymore, right? They say they white. You put something like Agent Orange in the same room, put somebody like, what's his name, Zelensky in the same room. What would they all have in common? They're all melanin recessive and white.
All the European, yeah, gotcha.
So we're being played the whole game about, oh, this red scare, oh, communism, oh, you're a socialist, oh, it's a game. They're all white people fighting one another. What's that got to do with African people? The brothers of Sahel said nothing. We're going to do our own thing. So the brother Ibrahim Traore, from what I hear, they got a whole lot of now economic growth going on with buses and railways and
tomato factories,
tomato plants.
And the reason why it was problematic in the past because they're landlocked. Uh-oh. You still see me?
Yeah, we don't see you, but we hear you.
All right. So they were landlocked. So as landlocked place, you don't have access to the coastline to do your transactions. So you can see how they were exploited over the years by not having best marketing opportunities. So all I'm saying is that you start to see our growth now. It's going to be a powerful situation when we start to work together. But the powers that be, all those individuals just said, you put white people in the room, it doesn't matter if they're Russian, Italian, Irish, they all look the same. So there's some countries like Ireland, they focus on some revolutionary things. They ain't going with Agent Orange. You know, St. Patrick's Day coming up, March, they green. They don't know Agent Orange. You got some countries like Canada say, okay, you want to do that? All right, we're going to do this. So, but I'm saying when you collectively put them all together, we as African people don't look at us as black. We're in the same room. We start to divide things up. Not them. They start working together. Like I said, yeah, you couldn't tell Zelensky different from Putin if they were in the same room. These white people. One got a beard, one doesn't. One bald head, one got hair. They still white people. Netanyahu, he's a Jewish guy. From what I understand, got history. He's been in Pennsylvania. He got stuff in the United States that he's come from, but he still's a white man. So we get confused by their discussions about what we're saying about our so-called blackness. We the ones got to confuse. That's why we can't wait on them to say what we should be as black people, because we see with them, this is white people having arguments. They having problems. They have a world war.
Right.
They have a world war and don't involve Africa, but it's a world war. It don't involve India. It's a world war. And when you said about the shores and where they've gone, oh my goodness, you heard of Tasmania? They wiped them people out. There is zero existing today. So how do we say that couldn't happen again?
And to add something that you were saying too about how our outreach went to these other places like Russia. Two things, because people don't know how Russia helped with apartheid in South Africa and Cuban and all this stuff. And I was just in Ghana, I went to the Du Bois Center and found out the relationship that Du Bois had with China. They gave him gifts. When Kwame Nkrumah went down, his wife sent refuge to China, and she wound up dying in China, and they brought her remains back to be with her husband in Ghana. So, and he was called himself almost a communist. W. Du Bois did. He embraced that particular system. So, and Mao then was like, "Hey, man, you the man." Gave him gifts, several gifts, and things like that. So it's interesting how history. If you don't know the history, you would America will have you looking at Castro all funny, looking at Putin all funny, looking at Gaddafi all funny, and you don't even know why, because you don't know that their involvements and some of the things that they've done to help black folks.
And that's why we're in a precarious situation as Africans living in North America, because where do you stand? There was a Secretary of Defense, was a brother. He was Secretary of Defense. He was a brother, but they got rid of him. But he was a brother. But he was still attacking and not supporting the Palestinian people that were being massacred because he's part of the enterprise. Colin Powell is a brother. Colin Powell, a brother, but he still was involved in invading Panama, Grenada, and African nations. A brother. You had a brother named Obama killed an African brother. What African did he kill when he was in place?
Gaddafi.
So we're in a precarious position being in the empire of where do you stand? So how could Russia be my enemy or China be my enemy when they help them African countries gain independence?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Moore, when you talk about the possible extinction of us, and you juxtapose that against the declining birth rate that the recessive genetic folks have, and you look at the explosion of population on the continent of Africa, I'm just trying to tie those things together because white folks, the birth rates are declining because the average age is over 40 for the white woman. But then you look at the continent of Africa, and then the average age is in the 20s. So again, I'm just coming back to this idea of perhaps the reason that they're promoting this idea of miscegenation is for self-preservation.
But you late. You just think about it now. They've been thinking about that 20 years ago.
For sure.
So the manifestation is here because if you look at what happened during the slave enterprise, it was devastating. If you taking the best, removing, extracting, what's going to happen to the place where you took them from? It's going to be dilapidated. It's going to go down. Africa has struggled with the issues of diseases and, some of the not plagues, but dilemmas with health because they haven't had the resources. So, it's gone down. So in that you look at, oh no, guess what? Then the population is going to go down. And that actually did happen. But now you have a rebirth because of the bounce back. I mean, everything in life works in pendulums. Ancient brother Wayne Chandler wrote Ancient Future, dealing with that. These pendulums happen in history, it's rhythms. So I'm just saying that white folks have been thinking about this for years. That's why they plan. I mean, that's the problem with us as African people. We don't plan. You know what I mean? We're watching TV, telling you a vision. We don't plan. We ain't getting ready for the situation. That's why I'm saying you need to pack up something and protect your house. Then white folks, we call them white, whatever. These conquistadors, current conquistadors coming in your community and they want to now do something and take your community. What you going to do? Shoot them with a straw and a pea shooter? No, you need to develop ways to plan and protect not just your community, but yourself first. Self-preservation is the first law of life. And we've been taught not to do that. As you said, we're also welcoming. We're also warm and let people come in. And if you can't see that, you saw it what happened in South Carolina when that white boy came into church. Let the white boy come into church just to sit back there. Why are people praying in their own community? Y'all know what I'm talking about. We all know what we're talking about. White boy came into church and shot them people up, and that white boy is still living. How does that happen? Because our kind nature has been taken advantage of, and that's what happened when we were taken as slaves. White people want to put it on us. Oh, you enslaved your own self. You enslaved yourself too. It's like, so always throwing it off like, see, you did that. Well, we had people captured, yeah, but we wasn't like saying you got to be a chattel like cattle, like we ain't gonna never let you go. No, you gain your freedom doing your work. You're a prisoner now. You can go, or you work things out. And some of those prisoners, they were able to marry into the certain cultures and those tribes, and they worked it out. The white man came and destroyed and disrupted all that. And everywhere they go, they come and destroy, disrupt it. In your communities up there, you got gentrification coming. Gentrification has destroyed and disrupted everything. So we are in trouble if we don't I can't say plan, prepare. Because they ain't changing. We keep waiting for them to change.
That's what Dr. Abrams Wilson said. We around here waiting one day and thinking that he's going to change. He's going to get better. He's going to have this come to Jesus moment, and everything is going to be all right. And I want to throw this in real quick. You got people with these groups and these foundational groups, and they talking all this about building cities and trying to establish their own government inside. Government. My question is, if white folks are suffering and having issues like that, do you think they're going to leave you alone for you to prosper while they're suffering? Do you actually think that's going to happen? History tells you that they tried that before. And so I just don't see it. So, and last thing I'm going to say before we move on, last thing I'll say is that I had to come to grips We only 40-some million people in this place. That is a small number far as Black folks is concerned. So some folks who want to invest all their time and energy and don't make no relationships across the water, and if some of us perish doing that, that's just still a small amount of Black folks compared to the number of Black folks on the planet. It's very small. So I had to come to grips with that myself.
Yeah, like I said, we're in trouble because we don't look at the nature of what's being done to attack us. I mean, if they signed that you were free, why can't they sign you ain't free no more? You know what I mean? You didn't fight for that. You ain't killed for that. In Brazil, Zumbi and them, they killed for that. No, let's give a better example. In Haiti, they killed and got that. They didn't wait for somebody to sign some paper. They took that. That's why you see Haiti in the position it is today, because the white folks will not allow that spirit to rise again. So we got to be understanding that all the things are taken away. This slash and dash 2 months of just crazy executive orders is to set the tone that what we want to have happen. It may not happen. You know what I mean? They might not get Greenland. Mm-hmm. It may not say Hong Kong has a Panama, because all that stuff is bogus anyway. Mm-hmm. They might not change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of Mexico, because all that is just, you say, hyperbole. No,
hyperbole. That's what I was say. Yeah,
mm-hmm. it is, but they can make stuff manifest, because we've been talking about 2025 for years, and guess what? They made it happen. Prior to that was a Southern strategy, right? The Southern strategy that came prior to Lee Atwater, and kids don't know who Ronald Reagan is and all that, but during those times when they were like getting that Republican mindset, getting them Bushes in the place, Daddy Bush, Baby Bush, all that was the Southern strategy. Remember that guy, Willie Horton? Willie Horton's coming and he's going to rape your kids. They let him out of jail. Black. These white Democrats did that. They used that storyline. Kamala Harris lost because they kept pushing, oh, she's into transgender people. She wants transgender people to have this, and that. And it's like, what? It's a plan. Keep putting those false stories out there. White people are all like paranoid, and now white people now ain't got no jobs because they're getting cut and slashed too. They're like, come on, Trump. People thought you're gonna hurt them, not us. No, you're all getting hurt now, slashing and dash.
All right, we are winding down on our radio program. We need to button it up real quickly before we run out of time. We can do a few more moments on overtime, but I do know that Dr. Owens has an appointment at the tennis court, so we don't want to prevent him from exercising that brain activity from hand-to-eye coordination. So, we'd like to thank our engineer, Tone Harley, as always, for what he does to make this broadcast possible. And we'd like to thank you for viewing us right here on YouTube and Facebook and listening on AM 1490 WRE. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day, y'all. Peace.
Peace.
All right. We are exclusively on YouTube and Facebook. And as always, we like to ask for you to subscribe to the channels. It doesn't cost you anything. It's a real easy thing to do, and you'll get notifications when we do these broadcasts. The beauty of doing it the way that we do it now is that if you missed the show, you can always come back and check us out online on YouTube and on Facebook. And we've had some really great shows recently. I checked on our Tony Browder show, Brother Hamtonio. That show is up to 6,000 views. 6,000 views. It's phenomenal for us, and it's phenomenal for you. And again, the beauty of it is we can preserve these shows so that folks can come in and sup from the waters of wisdom that come from folks like Dr. T. Owens Moore and more. Before you go, Dr. Moore, I wanted to ask you about the idea of those migrations by ocean. We've had some folks on who have basically said that, Africans didn't have those kinds of ships and they couldn't get across the waters that way. And so the whole notion of they came before Columbus is a fallacy. I've had people bring that argument, and I don't argue with them. They have their reasons for thinking and saying that. I also reflect on folks like a Yoruba chief Fela Sawande that I studied with when I was at Kent State University, and he talked about the root races of man, Atlantis and Lemuria, and there were times when Africa and South America were joined, and the way the earth evolved, those continents separated. Can you give us any insight on that, and perhaps why we're seeing pyramids all over the world? And it just so happens that some of those pyramids are in Africa, and as you mentioned to us, the pyramids on this side of the planet.
Right. Yeah. Vince, you always pack a whole lot in your question there. And like, how do I address all those with bullseye? First, I want to say with 360 degrees in your network, I mean, you say 360, it's like all encompassing. So Tony Browder and brother Jeff Menzies, they're in Ohio, had a presentation last night together. Jeff Menzies is a professor there, I think at Central State University, also Morgan State connections, Howard University grad. You already know who Tony Browder is. They put together a program last night, if you did not see it. But because you all know Tony, and I know Tony and Jeff, and then you, 360 degree, the network. So for your audience, subscribe, assist, help, because you're not going to get this anywhere else. So I just, again, profoundly appreciate you guys for making the connection with people. Wayne Chandler, would not know him if I had not had a great connection with you all. So I'm just saying that to say you all are doing a fabulous job. As you throw out your questions, I mean, with the migrations and think about the boats, Brother Ham Tony, you were there in Ghana. People talk about Mansa Musa, Abu Bakr, talking about they traveled the seas. They sent boats out. They said a fleet of 100 or 200 boats.
Yeah.
Documentation there. White people say, well, it's just not figment of manifestation or figment of their imagination. Just say that, well, it couldn't have been. But the people on the other side of the world, we just talked about the connections. We just talked about us and our presence there, and those people in those lands saying that, wow, these black gods came across the seas, not to conquer, slash, and dash like the European does, because they didn't see the European before that. It was black people that were doing that traveling. So we have that documentation from the continent saying that they sent boats. We have the documentation from the people over there that they saw the presence. So we don't have to worry about white people saying, oh, they couldn't have traveled the boats. It's just like you say, a man couldn't dunk the ball from the foul line and reach the goal. That couldn't have been done. We see some images drawn, like, the Jordan sign on the Nike symbol. That's just a symbol. But people couldn't really do that, So conceptually, people are incarcerated. So the real concern, though, is on the Kemet side. How did they travel? You look on the temples, and if you see my presentation, I have the drawings of the boats that they had. So they were doing that. However, the boats looked, not sure, but you have it in stone, not some little pad, in stone that they traveled and did that. So the problem with Mansa Musa is when he then, here's a little, if you ever see those images of Mansa Musa or Abu Bakr showing the gold, and he's now going there and showing the gold with the Cairo because he wants to be impressive and show I got all this gold. So he's taking that gold. If you took now a travel from Ghana all the way over to Cairo and Kemet, that's a long caravan, right? It's almost like going across the United States if you look at the space and time. But people heard, what? This Negro got some gold. They call him Negro. I don't know what they call him back then. They call them Africans. I don't know. Them black people, whatever they call them, they got gold. Somebody's got gold, and now they're just giving it out to people. So he made the mistake by traveling like that, showing, oh, I got all this gold. Now the white people, what can I do to get that? It's the same thing going on with our communities today with the coastlines, where Hilton Head, the Gullah Islands, white people coming in trying to get that property. Not trying, they got the property. What can we get as gold to them? Land, that property. So it's going to be problematic because you see the seaside is going to now start to get washed away, but they're taking the lands from the people who had it there for years. So when this migration information is being stated, you see the proof of what people said on those other parts of the world where we were there. So we're not even worried about people saying, oh, they couldn't even travel by boats, because you could throw a bottle in the ocean, and eventually the bottle's going to make it to the other side of the ocean. So the currents with a boat, sailboat, you know what I mean? I have no concerns and issues with that happening. The only problem I do have, though, is the coastlines. When I was in Peru, they had almost like a tsunami weather the day I had departed. The waves were so hard, the boats that were there on the coast being toppled over. So you just think about in the past, I'm almost, because we know the word tsunami today because we hear about earthquakes underneath the earth and then the ripple effect. And then you saw those things that happened in Indonesia and the Sumatra where the whole island watered and the water recedes. So that could have happened in the past on multiple times. But by the coast, there's a reason why there's certain parts of the western coast of Africa where the European couldn't come in because the waves are too high. You can't just take a big boat and then get all the people. You have to have the people then get on a little boat.
Right.
Big boats. If the water's too rough, it's not going to happen. Africans were there for centuries. They know how the water works. They fish in it. They know how it operates. They know what to do. So there are some parts, though, those waterways over there is kind of rough. And who knows, could have been more passage back in the day. It could have gotten worse today. But I've seen the coastlines, like some of those places in Ghana, you ain't getting in that water.
That's right. That
water is rough. In Hawaii, that water will take you under. So there's some places more passive. So when we speak of migrations, I think that the Africans knew of certain places that were easier to travel through. And then on the issue of navigation, man, you know how many people stuck on this thing for a GPS, can't read a map, don't know where north-south is. Man, them Africans looked at the stars. You know what I mean? They looked at using something called lodestone. Lodestone's like a iron ore that can look at north, magnetic poles. They use that to navigate. So we were looking at the celestial bodies and using science to travel and not using the GPS today. So right now, people's eyes can't even look up in the stars because your eyes are all messed up from looking at this all day. You know what I mean? Everybody's looking now. You walk down the street right now, everybody's going to be right here. Ain't nobody looking up. Hang their eyes and being able to see things celestially. So that's how they traveled in the past, looking at the stars. So I say migration like is so simple by ocean, but as they then got on land, they then spread and went out. If you think about that location where Peru is, man, you go to a place called Bolivia. There's a place called Lake Titicaca. Titicaca. It's like a big lake there, and there's a place called Teotihuacan. But it's like a gigantic complex where we were there also. And you start to see the boulders and the big constructions. It's the same thing that we did there in Machu Picchu. So those people who were there, the Incas, they just then extended on what was already there in that land, and the documentation is there for that. You start looking at those original people, the Mochi people, the Chavan culture. They got African people, big noses. Some of the artwork potteries got brown skin. Those are the pre-Inca people.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, as you were explaining about the ships, I recall visiting a museum on the Giza Plateau.
Yeah.
And it's got a great big boat in it.
Right. That's what I was thinking about. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so the thing is, the time frame that it was, Pianki, 25th dynasty, Pianki, Taharka, man, the documentation there that they sailed. So, and you look on the temples, they go to Abu Simbel, and you go into the mountain, the carved out mountain. You see the big kings sitting there, the pharaohs. You go into there, you see all it written on the walls about the boats. The point I'm making is it could have been traveling across Africa, because if you look at the bottom, you look at the Sahel and it's being like desert-like. If you look at the bottom of the ocean, it's desert-like. It's like sand. So there was, at a time period, waterways that people traveled that could have been intercontinental. That is, they're on Africa. But they also went the other way, Red Sea, and went through the Indian Ocean and India and in those islands. And that's another way to travel, especially to get to Peru, rather than having to go from across Africa and then leave the West Coast to do that. So I'm just saying that there's so many ways. And since we don't know history and we can't say that it happened, like yesterday, it happened thousands of years ago. You got this joker in there for 2 months creating havoc. He'll be gone in another 3 years. I think 3 years, 4 years, 4 years. He might even die in place.
Hey, but Doc, but what they're doing right now, like I say, that's why you have to stay focused. And like you said earlier, read so you can stay grounded in truth, because right now, I heard some information out there, them doubting that we was brought over here at all, or if there were really slave boats, that they put people in boats that really travel. Go to the slave castle, knucklehead. You see, I mean, they are intentionally putting all this information out here to discourage people, to just have people looking in all kind of different directions and not unfocused about what's going on, and therefore they don't move, they don't do anything, and because they find themselves grounded in all this old crazy rhetoric, and they don't do anything. They don't move at all from one place to another. So when they say this, and then they want to hold on to the whole slave. Well, they sold us into slavery. I mean, that's 500 years ago. You still holding on to that?
Erasing racism. Erasing. Yeah, you can do whatever you do to change the storyline.
Yeah.
So that's exactly why it's being done like that, to not have it in the bookstores, not have it in your homes. You erase it, and then what? Never existed. That's what I'm saying. We're going to have a day and time where people are like, you mean there was $1 billion industry called March Madness and black people ran that? Black people were the pawns in the game? Well, where'd they go? Do they exist anymore?
Yeah.
It could happen one day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Brother Gerard reminds us that history is his story and can be rewritten. And that's exactly what they're doing. And they're trying to write us out of the history. And what they're not acknowledging is that we are responsible for their history.
Yeah. The dangerous part you see is these people who are mad at what Trump is doing, but said, I'll still support him. That's insanity.
Yeah.
So you can't fight against that. You got to leave them people by themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't deal with that. That's what I'm saying. We're in a state of consciousness right now where people are duped. And if you can't see, remember Jim Jones? I think we talked about him before, but Jim Jones, I mean, he took 800 black people down to some place in Guyana, and then they drank the Kool-Aid. And they're not here anymore. 800? So was that a CIA plant to see if it could work? This shock and awe for these 2 months, let's just say all this stuff. Let's see if it works. You know what I mean? So other countries are going to respond to that. Other, people are going to respond to that, but how much can we get away with? And the fact, as I'm saying, you're going to censure a black man, elderly black man who spoke up, spoke truth to power, that shows you we ain't got the power. If you voted to censor him. So we got to be in a position where we don't have this anxiety, but we are in a position to say and boldly speak. Because I don't know if you guys got a chance to look at Brother Roland Martin. The same time that the State of Union address was on, he had a program on about democracy at risk, and then talked about where we should be, and had Bishop William Barber speak. Excellent, dynamic, but wasn't paying attention to the Daffy Duck show. Because that's all it was. He spoke for 2 hours talking about nothing.
Nothing.
And people stand up clapping for that mess. That's insanity.
It is. Hey, hold on, but this is the state of where we at in this country, man. So I it's just something to take note of, and you need to be really planning some things around that kind of craziness. It's great, and what they've done and always done in the past is take advantage of our spirituality, and like when you brought up the Jim Jones situation, we thought we was following somebody, a man of God, and we trying to get closer to God, and this whole situation, and people have always taken advantage of that.
And he was doing that same stuff that Clive Davis and Puff Daddy was doing, and all that butt booty stuff. They was doing the same thing. That's how he was getting the people, manipulating the people. He faked his own assassination. I'm going to repeat this 3 times. Jim Jones faked his own assassination. Jim Jones faked his own assassination. Jim Jones faked it because he wanted to. He's losing the support of his people. So he was almost killed. Now the people back to loving him again. Do I need to say any more?
Nope.
Thank you. I'll leave
Crystal
that one
clear. Crystal clear.
You said you gotta took a page out of something, brother.
telling you, and that's what we see. There's no other way to explain this mass psychology of insanity except for knowing that it's a playbook. We've done this before.
You know what though? Let me say this, see, and I think we need to stress this, and it all comes together with all kind of like what we was talking about when we talking about the population issue that our European brothers are having. We talked about the mighty might of them trying to have the biggest gun. You know, any scientific innovations, they got to turn it, they got to weaponize it some kind of way to make it to their benefit and things like that. So we got to understand the desperateness of what we are dealing with as a people, and we walking around in la 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 land, and with no urgency. I used to do an analogy of, you know, black folks is like being on a train that is running 500 miles an hour down the track, and they listening to elevator music when there's no conductor, not worrying about the crash that is about to happen. They're on there listening to elevator music, and the train is just rolling down the line. And that's where we are. We got to pull that cord some kind of way, man, and ring that bell and wake them up out of this state of comatose, you know?
So you had me talk about Peru. So Machu Picchu is this gigantic mountain. They didn't create the mountain. They created the civilization that's in that. It's only 50 years old. The conquistadors stopped and did not go any further because they heard that, well, the gold wasn't there. So they're not going to go all the way up there. And you just think about trying to get up there today. It was hard back then to do it. But they said there was no gold. The point I'm making is every time these native peoples of the land heard that they were coming, they would leave, get up and go. They heard, they got up and go. You think about us as African people in the drum. We use the drum to communicate to the people down below, down the river or somewhere else, the drum. They got ready, prepared to go. We got, I don't know what drum we have today.
When's the call, huh?
Yeah, because people ain't listening. You know, so I'm just saying Roland Martin for that State of Union address presented something else for people to listen to. He's on from 7 to 1 a.m. Good discussion, good conversation. It can be done, but you have to have the call that needs to go out to be prepared to not getting taken out. And right now we getting taken out. I haven't watched a single basketball game this year. March Madness is here. I don't know if I'm going to watch that. NBA, hadn't had the opportunity to kind of spend time watching that. Watch the football, NFL, only because from Philly, so Philly won and got the Super Bowl. But I'm hoping they don't go to the White House. I'm hoping they have no issues and desire to go to the White House.
They turned it down.
You know who Jesse Owens is?
Yes,
yeah.
from
Jesse
Cleveland.
Owens. Jesse from Cleveland. Okay, so Ohio in the house. Jesse Owens, he said Hitler didn't shake his hand. You know that? But he wasn't worried because the president of the United States didn't shake his hand either.
Oh, wow.
Yep. President of the United States didn't shake his hand either. When does it stop? It doesn't stop because that's their behavior. So that's what I'm saying. We need to put ourselves in a position of spending our time doing things that are wise to prepare rather than waiting around. Are they going to change? They ain't changing. They setting up shop.
Acceptance, brother. Acceptance. Much as we don't like and don't want to hear it, it's all about acceptance because they got this right here, this mind. They got it on lockdown, like Carter G. Woodson said. They got it on lockdown, and we're on automatic dummy down, and we're easily distracted because we want to be accepted. Like Dr. Amos Wilson said, we think because we may be able to consume like the European, that's equal footing because I can buy what you can buy, and so everything is all right. But that don't equate to wealth.
But you know what? I have to go back to asking the question that Vince always brings up about the health issue. I mean, yeah, I wrote Science of Melanin. I wrote Pigment Power. I wrote Dark Matters, Dark Secrets. Yeah, I've investigated this for years. But the reality is, you know what? Scientifically, the hair products, the things we're ingesting, the way that technology is today, people really have been dumbed down. And so lead the artificial substances, red 40, some of these things that are here in this society, other societies don't even have it in the marketplace.
That's right.
So from fluoride that people talk about, I mean, so Vince, you've been asked these questions for years. The reality is, scientifically, it could be a reason why I'm looking at the students like, you don't get that? You never heard that? You don't understand that?
Yeah.
They might really not.
What Dr. Whitaker wrote, that's in there. I've seen it in other places. They talk about Nazi Germany when they used the fluoride, and people don't believe it up in Cleveland today that, like you say, other cities and states have banned this, and countries have banned the use of fluoride. Don't that tell you something?
Yeah. So Vince, you've been on something for years. I don't know. I'm going to leave it to you to investigate now, write that and see and document. You're right about, people saying these hair care products that are coming through, the sisters putting all that stuff in their hair, and that stuff seeping in your hair. And not saying
they talk about the false hair now, the calinculon. They said it's toxic. That's going on the internet right now. And so where's your FDA and all those other folks working for you now? When it clearly states these particular toxins that are in the hair that's on your head, but like everything else right now, long as it's affecting black folks, it's okay. Ain't no outcry there.
Yeah, that's why when Trump, as long as he gonna mess up them little brown people, but don't affect me. Now it's affecting them. Oh, can you please reevaluate what you're doing? It's too late. The program.
And the last thing I'm gonna say before you close, Vince, is that I said it and you see it. He's gonna isolate this country from the rest of the world, and he's gonna be the spiraling down has begun. And that's what he's doing. Now you just seen what Canada just said and what they doing. They took all their U.S. products off the shelves. Now it's hurting them. So sit back and watch the show, people. Watch and listen. If you want to know how to protest when it starts affecting light-skinned folks, they're gonna show you how to protest. So sit back, get your popcorn, relax, and watch the show.
Right. I hear you. And one more comment though. As you stated, because you asked initially about different places like Denmark. The reason why Denmark and places like Sweden are like more, can't use the word progressive, but unified, because it's all white. They ain't dealing with the migration and immigration issues. So those countries that have that unification is just them, you see, they ain't dealing with this stuff. I can't say all people in Denmark and Sweden, people that they are racist, but they got a unified culture. So we as African people, we're living in a multi kind of layered environment, but we now have something to unify us. And maybe that will be a way that we can start working together to not go down with the ship.
Yeah. So I'd like to offer this as we close. There's a saying, every dog has its day. And the United States has had its period of dominance, but every civilization that has been dominant has seen its fall. And I believe that we are in that place in America right now. And you mentioned, the health angle, and that it's very important. We talk about things that we shouldn't have, like fluoride. And by the way, there was a report that I watched that indicated that there were some cities in the United States that stopped using fluoride. And then you had some Asian expert on saying that as a result of that, there's been an increase in cavities and blah, 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 to refute the idea that fluoride could be dangerous to us. But I'd like to offer an additional solution. Kendrick Lamar gave it to us a few weeks ago when he said, turn the TV off. So I want to say, turn the TV off and do what Dr. Moore does. You can see a whole bunch of books behind him. And from those books, you glean knowledge, and the knowledge that you glean empowers you. Turn off the screen, pick up a book, use that tactile experience of processing what's on that page into your brain as a positive impact on your life.
Beautiful.
And Dr. Moore has several books that let you understand and know about your physiology and what this black stuff that's in your skin, how powerful it is. You sitting there, got all the ammunition that you need and don't know it.
Yeah, there it is.
All right, brothers.
All right. So with that, thanks for joining us. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day. Peace, everyone.
Peace. Thank you, Doc.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm.